Pokemon games are full of lots of secrets and under-the-radar stuff. Everything from Easter eggs, references, and sometimes even Pokemon themselves are hiding throughout the games for players to find. But sometimes, entire features and mechanics of the games will also go completely unnoticed as well. That's what we're going to be covering in today's video, as I am going to be highlighting some hidden features and mechanics from every Pokemon generation that you might not know about. Gen 9 will sadly be absent since Scarlet and Violet aren't out quite yet, but the first 8 generations of Pokemon still have a ton to offer themselves. So let's check it out. So today's video has quite literally been made possible in part by the support of today's wonderful sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid's support over the years has been huge in allowing this channel to keep going and to keep growing, and Raid has grown too, bringing a console-level gameplay experience right to your phone. With millions of different champion combinations, you'll have countless tactics at your disposal to take on raid bosses, dungeon runs, campaign battles, and PvP arena matches. Speaking of champions, there are over 600 in the game, meaning you're bound to find plenty that you enjoy. 2 of my personal favorites are Skill of the Drakes and Herndig. They both have great designs and are both super viable in-game. Skill is just a great all-around champion that can do well in any situation, and Herndig hits super hard, which makes him a ton of fun to use. There's always something going on in Raid as well, such as this month they just introduced the Sylvan Watcher faction, which brings even more champions into the game. Additionally, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you're also going to be able to get a bunch of amazing exclusive gear as well, making it a great time to jump in on the fun. If you want to check it out, you can hit the link in the description or scan the QR code on screen to download the game. And that's also going to get you a free Epic Champion, Ina, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, and 1 XP boost, and 1 ancient shard, just for downloading through my link. That's $30 worth of goodies, all for free. When you get in game, you'll be able to find those goodies right here, so be sure to check all of that out. And a big thank you to Raid for supporting the channel and helping to make videos like this one possible. Okay, so for our entry on Gen 1, we're actually starting with a unique case compared to the other entries, because this one is probably more well known than some of the others on this list, but it's also one that I feel like is overshadowed for various reasons, and therefore may have passed you by. Additionally, it's not an intended feature of the games either, but it is one that you can perform without glitching or hacking the game in any way, so it's more like an exploit. This exploit is one that can allow you, in Pokemon Red and Blue, to catch Pokemon from the Safari Zone outside of the Safari Zone, and without any of the Safari Zone restrictions. If you enter into the Safari Zone, exit it, and then fly directly to Cinnabar Island, you can surf along the eastern coast of the island that borders Route 20, and proceed to find Safari Zone Pokemon there. The Pokemon that appear here are completely catchable, can be battled normally, unlike in the Safari Zone, and are based on the last area of the Safari Zone you were in before leaving. This is a rather cool trick since it's easy to perform and doesn't require any glitching of the game, as I mentioned. And while it is a rather infamous trick, due to the litany of more prominent glitches in Gen 1 like the Mew glitch and the Missing No glitch, which also occurs in the same location, it's possible that this one could have just got swept under the rug for some people. I know I definitely didn't know about it growing up. So the next time you're playing Gen 1 and want to easily get a Chansey or a Scyther, you now have an easier way of doing so. Now, unlike the Safari Zone trick from the Kanto games, this next feature of the Johto games is hidden much deeper into the game itself, and is going to go completely unnoticed by most players. This would concern an item known as the Light Ball. The Light Ball is the signature item of Pikachu that boosts its attack and special attack when held. You may have heard about this item in later generations, but you may not have known that it existed as far back as Generation 2. And this is because the only way to get the Light Ball in the Gen 2 games was to trade for the starter Pikachu from Pokemon Yellow, who would be holding it upon arriving in the Gen 2 games. Considering this item makes no other appearance anywhere in these titles, and requires 2 Game Boys, Pokemon Yellow and a Gen 2 game, and a link cable in order to obtain, it has to be not only one of the most buried and out-of-the-way features of any Pokemon game, but also one of the hardest and most convoluted items to obtain ever. Especially because the game doesn't even really tell you about its existence in the first place. Gen 3's hidden mechanic is another one that, just like the Light Ball from Gen 2, the games don't really make any attempt to tell you about, at least that I'm aware of, meaning that it very easily can go unnoticed, especially because it's also a feature that doesn't even announce itself. This feature would be the outside of battle effects of various abilities. Abilities are a thing that were introduced in this generation, of course, and their main purpose is for use in battle. However, several abilities, in addition to their in-battle effects, also have effects outside of battle. Effects which don't really announce themselves or are mentioned to you in any way, they just kinda happen. Meaning that they could be in effect while you're playing the game, and you could easily just not notice at all. One ability in particular whose effect I wanted to focus on today is Cute Charm. Cute Charm is an ability that can infatuate the opponent in battle, but it also has an additional effect outside of battle as well, being that if a Pokemon with Cute Charm is in the first position of your party, it will cause wild Pokemon of the opposite gender to appear 66.7% of the time. This can be extremely useful for finding Pokemon who only appear as one gender or the other a small percentage of the time, especially when you factor in certain gender-exclusive evolutions like with Combee and Salandit. Additionally, this extra effect didn't even exist until Pokemon Emerald, making it even easier to miss considering it was added partway through a generation, and was an addition that you probably weren't expecting and probably was too small to be worth mentioning for Game Freak and the Pokemon Company. While really cool and extremely useful, this is the kind of thing that you pretty much would just have to discover for yourself, which is also kind of cool in a way as well, but it means that you could also very easily just not know about it at all. For Gen 4, we also have a feature that is an additional effect, but this time it concerns a move rather than an ability. Roost is a move that was introduced in Gen 4, and it's basically just a flying-type healing move that restores half of the user's HP when used. However, what the game doesn't really bother to mention is that when a flying-type Pokemon uses Roost, it actually loses its flying type until the end of the turn. This means that moves that would normally be super effective against a flying type, like Electric, will not deal that super effective damage during that turn. Additionally, in future generations, this move can even cause a Pokemon to change types, as if a pure flying type Pokemon uses Roost, it will become normal type until the end of that turn, and can even become typeless in special situations, like if it is a fire flying type Pokemon you're dealing with that has also used the move Burn Up to remove its fire typing as well. So, needless to say, there is a lot more to the move Roost than just healing your Pokemon. Jumping to Gen 5 now, we've got another secret effect of a move to discuss, and this time that move would be Telekinesis. Telekinesis is a Psychic-type move that was introduced in this generation, and when used, makes any moves other than one-hit KO moves guaranteed to hit the target for 3 turns, but it also makes them immune to Ground-type moves as well. The weird part about this move, though, is that there are certain specific Pokemon that this move will not work against. Pretty much in every other scenario, whether a move is effective or not is determined by the type of the target, but with Telekinesis, in addition to that, there's a list of 5 specific Pokemon that are completely immune to the move. and those Pokémon are Diglett, Dugtrio, Sandygast, Palossand, and Mega Gengar. Now, that seems like just about the most random assortment of Pokémon you could possibly ask for, but there is a specific reason why these Pokémon have been singled out. The description of telekinesis states that it makes the target float with psychic power, which for these Pokémon in particular would be a bit of a problem considering they are all affixed to the ground in one way or another. So basically, Game Freak is taking every measure they can to ensure we don't get to see what Diglett and Dugtrio actually look like when they're not in the ground. For real though, while a weird and under-the-radar mechanic, this is actually an extremely good attention to detail, and I commend Game Freak for actually paying this much attention to this kind of stuff when they could just as easily ignore it and still have it be not that big of a deal. For the feature of Gen 6, we've got an interesting one, because it's one that you are basically guaranteed to be staring right in the face multiple times while playing the games, and you could very easily not even know that it's a thing. A feature known as Natural Objects was introduced in Pokémon X and Y that introduced various objects of the natural variety into the background of battles, which could produce items that you could pick up after the battle ended if you used certain moves in the battle that were able to hit these objects. These objects are all over the place in the games, so you're pretty much always going to see them throughout your adventure at one point or another. But since they are literally natural objects and consist of things like trees and rocks, they blend into the background setting of each battle so perfectly that it's almost impossible to be able to naturally tell that they're actually something more than just a background element. Additionally, there are only a small handful of moves that are actually capable of hitting these objects, and these moves are also tied to certain kinds of objects, meaning that not every move in this list can hit every object available. So basically, the vast majority of players would have played through X and Y without interacting with this feature once, let alone knowing it even exists in the first place. With all that in consideration, it makes it rather unsurprising that this feature hasn't appeared in a single other game since. Generation 7 was a generation that introduced a lot of brand new concepts to the franchise, like the Island Challenge, Ultra Beasts, and regional variants. But there are of course things that have flown under the radar from this generation as well. One of the smaller mechanics that Gen 7 introduced was giving a new effect to a classic item. Historically, the Everstone is an item that can be given to a Pokémon and while it is being held, will prevent that Pokémon from evolving. However, Gen 7 gave the Everstone an additional utility that is arguably much more useful. If an Everstone is being held by a Pokémon with a regional variant, and then that Pokémon is bred, the resulting baby Pokémon will always be the same variant as the parent. This might seem like it would be this way naturally, but in reality, babies of regional variant Pokémon will normally be the variant that corresponds with the region in which they were bred, meaning that an Alolan Ninetales will produce a Cantonian Vulpix in, say, the Galar region, instead of an Alolan one. But if you give that same Ninetales an Everstone, it will then proceed to produce Alolan babies. Seems kinda backwards, I know, but this is definitely a good feature to know about if you're into breeding. And last but not least, we now come to Generation 8. Sword and Shield, as the first new generation of games made available on home consoles, had the opportunity to introduce a ton of new features, and more or less, it did just that. One feature that 99% of people are probably going to miss though, occurs when checking the status of your Pokémon on its summary screen. If you press the left thumbstick button while on this screen, your Pokémon will actually perform a small animation, like this absolutely terrifying one that Obstagoon does. Again, it's just one of those things that they put in the game as a nice little touch, but at the same time it's too small to really bring attention to, which ultimately results in most people not being aware of it at all. With that said though, those were some hidden features and mechanics in Pokémon that you may have not known about. Were any of these new to you? Do you know of any hidden mechanics that I didn't mention? Be sure to let me know in the comments below, and leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new for more. With that said though, I will be back very soon with another video, and until then, as always, thank you all so much for watching this one, I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.